Good evening, everyone. If we could all start to get seated, that would be absolutely amazing. I hope you guys all had a fantastic day. I know you've heard this quite a few times from all of us, but if you could please make sure to fill out the feedback forms from all the great sessions today, that would be absolutely amazing and really important for us. I'm happy to announce as well that we're still on track for our Millennium mission with our number of meetings executed throughout today. As long as we execute efficiently tomorrow, I'm happy to announce that we'll be making
success. Let me define value first of all. By value, I mean growth in sales, growth in profitability, better capital efficiency, achieving your sustainability results, and delivering value to the business. This is real quantified value to the business. I'm not talking about successful go live. That's fine, that's okay, that's what we should do, but that's not delivering value. So coming back home alive is not equal to winning the war. So we're talking about winning the war here, how to deliver value in digital transformation. That's the topic of discussion, but very, very high level and general. So I jump in. I always say that supply chain is actually very simple. You need just two things to succeed in supply chain. One is a crystal ball, and second is a magic wand. The crystal ball so that you can predict prices, volume, demand, everything accurately, very simple. And a magic wand which makes sure that everything falls in place magically together and you achieve your business results. It's as simple as that. Do you agree? Absolutely. Now, unfortunately, both these things are out of stock. It so happened that ironically, the crystal ball factory could not foresee a flood. A flood happened and the factory closed down. And the magic wand could not withstand the magic of a cyber attack. So both factories have closed down. Sorry, you won't get it for next 10, 20, 30 years at least. After that, we will see what happens. So what is the next best substitute? The next best substitute is digital technologies, which allow you to predict demand, which allow you to predict prices, do the modeling, and orchestrate supply chain as much as you can on a real-time basis and deliver magical results. That's the next best thing that we have, which is digital technologies. And some of you are doing that already, certainly, aren't you? How many are implementing some digital technology? Can you please raise your hands if you can? Oh, that's great. Now, before you start believing in this story called Harry Potter and the magical digital technology, I must tell you there's a twist in the plot. The twist in the plot is that people are investing a lot in digital transformation, but they're not necessarily getting value out of it. As I say again, going live is not value generation. Value generation is delivering numbers for the business, which your CEO, your CFO, and the leadership team buys. They understand, yes, this is the value that you have generated. Paybacks, as somebody said earlier today. So what's happening? The stats are not great. The stats are that a lot of organizations are implementing huge amount of stuff. It is their top priority. The board talks about it. The leadership teams talks about it. You see the numbers? $3.4 trillion investment in digital transformation by 2026. Majority of the organizations have it on the top of the agenda. But the last line is a little depressing, which says that only 35% of the organizations are getting the results in terms of value. This is a very similar research which was given by HBR last year, very similar numbers that nearly 90% of the firms have some digital transformation program, but only 31% realize the revenue uplift and only 25% realize the cost benefits. What does it do? What does it do to future investments? Suppose you have a poor result, and next time you go to the board with another digital investment proposal, do you think they say, okay, doesn't matter, keep wasting money, let it go down the drain, we have unlimited supply, so let's do one more digital transformation project? I don't think that happens. Does it? I wish it happened, but it doesn't happen that way. So it is critical for us, therefore, to make sure that we're getting value out of digital transformation. And I think for supply chain, it is particularly critical. And I'll explain why. In my view, supply chain's performance, the excellence in efficiency and the excellence in efficacy can be significantly enhanced with right digital technologies. In fact, the difference between a great supply chain and a mediocre supply chain is going to be how do you leverage digital technologies now and in the next few years. Let me explain that a little bit. So allow me to explain to you what I think supply chain is. All of you know, by the way, we have been sitting with expert leaders here, but let me present a view of supply chain to you. In my view, supply chain is orchestration of 4 flows. And those flows are the flows of materials, which is the physical flow of raw packaging, finished goods, so physical flows in the entire chain. The second flow is the flow of information and intelligence. So it's not only just information, the demand plan, the supply plan, materials plan, but the intelligence in the entire flow. And the third flow is capital. Capital that you deploy in your manufacturing network, your distribution network, and even the capital your business partners deploy. Because at the end of the day, if your business partners are deploying capital one way or the other, it's a part of your business model and your cost model, and you pay for it. So total capital deployed. And cash, which is the working capital. But here the magic starts. Supply chain manages all these flows simultaneously. It is where this DNA of the supply chain starts to kick in, that we have to manage these flows simultaneously. What do we do with that? We do this management of the flows to continuously improve 4 arenas. We improve the connectedness of the supply chain. We want to make sure that supply chain is operating as one whole and not disconnected. We want to make sure it is optimized, can be optimized for cost, optimized for service, optimized for any criteria that you want, sustainability, resilience, etc. Third thing, we want to make sure that it is reliable. It's performing every hour, every day, every month reliably, and is able to withstand disruptions and risks, which is resilience. And the fourth element is improving the velocity of the flows. As we improve the velocity of the flows, the efficacy of the supply chain, the efficiency of the supply chain, and all the KPIs improve. Agility, responsiveness, capital, cost, everything. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, simultaneously. We have to deliver all these 4 things simultaneously. That's the magic of supply chain. And why do we do that? We do that in order to deliver 4 business results, which is revenue and growth, margin and profitability, capital efficiency, and sustainability. Once again, for the 3rd time, simultaneously. We have to deliver all these things simultaneously. That's the magic of supply chain. And I was telling somebody a while ago that in my view, this is the best job to do, because the scope of this job, the impact of this job on the business is massive. Now, if you look at this chart, in my view, the whole supply chain strategy can be summed up in this one chart, because you're making decisions on where to invest to get results. As an example, if you invest in the flow of information and intelligence, and if you have an intelligent supply chain, you can reduce your working capital by working on lower inventories. So those are the kind of decisions we make in supply chain regularly. So now, to the point I was making. If you look at this chart, digital technologies are almost magical. I said it jokingly before, but the impact of digital technologies on the middle of this chart, the connectedness, the optimization, the reliability and resilience, and velocity and agility is almost magical. So the stakes for us as a team, as a supply chain community, are very high to make sure that we deploy right digital technologies and we deliver the value out of them. So that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit as we go forward. So here is my overall proposition. The proposition is that successful digital transformation is a science, as well as an art. The science part is very crucial, the program, the project, the resources, the technology, the blueprinting, and so on and so forth. It's extremely important. But the art part is equally, if not more critical for success. How do you match it with the culture of the organization? How do you make sure that you are able to connect the functions within the organization and connect suppliers and customers and transport service providers? How do you make sure there's the right strategy in place before we embark on this journey? How do you do the adaptation and change in the organization to the operating model, to the structure, to the processes? How do you manage stakeholders in the organization? So that part is extremely important, and most importantly, leadership. And leadership of the supply chain people I'm talking about. I'm not talking about general leadership, I'm talking about supply chain community can be the leader in digital transformation, and allow me to explain that a little bit. Since I mentioned leadership, I would like to share with you my definition of leadership. There are thousands of definitions of leaderships, and there are thousands of books in supply. Here is how I look at leadership. Leadership for me is a behavior. It's not a person, it's not a position, it's not hierarchy, it is a behavior. It is a behavior which is accessible to us at any point in time, right now, without reading a book, without doing a course. It's a behavior which we can do now as we speak. So what is that behavior? In response to any situation in life or in work, we typically behave on the spectrum, one of the four kind of behaviors. Either we are a victim, or we are a bystander, or we are a participant, or we are a leader. So these are the four behavior styles that all of us demonstrate, whether in a meeting, or a discussion with your boss, discussion with a supplier, or your personal life, or discussion with your teenage daughter if you happen to have one. So these are the kind of behaviors we demonstrate. And how does it look? That behavior is like this. Making complaints is the behavior of a victim. Making comments is the behavior of a bystander. Taking action is the behavior of a participant. But taking ownership and shaping and orchestrating is the behavior of a leader. Now, let me take a sort of a silly example. If you live in a place where the street is dirty and it's messy, the victim would complain, oh, this is messy and people are stupid, nobody knows how to live here, and the person would make complaints and blame. The bystander would make a comment, say, yeah, this should be taken care of, something needs to be done about it, it's not good for us, etc. That's the bystander making a commentary. A person who's participant would do something. She might take some papers and put it in the bin, or she might clean the house in front, at least my house is clean, some action is taken. But leader is somebody who will take ownership of that. So this person would say, I will speak to the municipal authorities or civil authorities of the area. She will organize a WhatsApp group of the entire community and tell people that this is what we can do about it. She might organize a group of people who go from house to house and educate about cleanliness. This person will do something to make sure that she takes the ownership of the entire thing. And this person is not the boss of the street, she's not the inspector, she's not responsible for it, but it's a behavior of taking ownership in any area. So ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to say here is that this behavior is crucial in supply chain. I cannot imagine a great supply chain leader who does not behave on this spectrum. I'm not saying you always live on the right end of the spectrum, it never happens. But the question you have to ask yourself is that what percentage of my time, my day, do I spend on the right side here, which is taking ownership and leadership. In supply chain, it's make or break, because you're orchestrating different parties, suppliers, customers, transporters, you have internal departments, internal functions. You don't control them, but you are somehow responsible for orchestrating this whole system and deliver the results. So this behavior is absolutely vital in supply chain if you want to be a great supply chain leader. Now, this long speech which I have given is to say that same behavior you can demonstrate in digital strategies to get value out of digital strategies, because supply chain leaders are best placed to decide the digital strategies for the overall organization, which I will explain a little bit more as we go forward. So, in terms of the actions, the first thing which I wanted to say, which is ingredient number one, so-called recipe for success, is that always start from business strategy and stay connected with it. Never forget this rule. It's extremely important to understand that what is our business strategy? How are we going to win in the marketplace? What is our differentiated model? And how does that reflect in my digital strategy? The second point I've written, derive digital strategy from the business strategy, and I underline digital strategies because, unfortunately, we don't have digital strategies in place in many organizations. I'm being polite, I could say most, but in many organizations, we don't have digital strategy in place. We have substitutes for digital strategy, and those substitutes are digital band-aids, which is solving a small problem. The second is a digital spaghetti, in which we have a lot of digital technologies which are not connected with each other. Take the example of sales. Sales guys have a different number, finance has a different number, supply chain guys have a different number, and different countries can have different numbers for a global corporation. I mean, it's frankly a mess in most of the places. Then we can have a digital collage. Those of you who are still awake would notice that I have 3 elements and I've written 4 on the title. The 4th I could not write, it's digital bullshit, which is the most widely prevalent in many organizations. Now, I say this with all seriousness, that we don't invest in sitting down and rigorously drafting a digital strategy for the organization. What does that look like? That looks like this, somewhat, is that you take your business strategy, you take your strategic plan, and you work out a digital strategy which focuses on 5 components, which is our business model, our operating model, our data architecture, technology choices, and talent, but all together. And understand which applications we're going to deploy, which are the core systems we're going to deploy, how will they connect with each other, what will be the integration layer, what will be the front-end layer for the user interface, and how will we connect with the ecosystem outside. Now, is this easy to do? No. Is it possible to do? Yes. Is it worth doing? Certainly yes. Because this is the biggest source of generation of value in any organization, particularly global organizations which have multiple divisions, multiple countries, where what happens is that people just keep on doing their use cases, different applications, which are not connected, which are expensive, and over a period of time, the spaghetti just grows and grows and grows over a period of time. So for me, this is the first important thing to say, that it's really critical to invest in a full-fledged digital strategy. Even if you're not starting from scratch and you're midway, even then it is worth it to do. It's the highest value generation. The second point is somewhat similar. I always say never start from technology. First define what capabilities are critical for the success of your business, and then decide what are the right technology choices. This is also very vital. What do I mean by capabilities? To simplify, in my view, there are 6 capabilities which the businesses need and the supply chain needs. And those 6 capabilities are visibility, integration, prediction, optimization, simulation, prescription. These are the 6 capabilities that you require to run your supply chain and run any business model for that matter. Now, what you do is to start from there and then say, how am I going to create these capabilities in my business? And then work back in your digital strategy that then what technology choices will I have? How will they connect with each other? How will we make sure there's a platform choice? Because now these days we have excellent platforms which connect data and different technologies to generate value. So this is the second thing which I wanted to emphasize. The third thing is a little bit big. I've taken the liberty of writing too much on one slide, particularly for dinner time, but just bear with me. What I say here is that leverage digital transformation to move away from a siloed way of working. This is a word which is what we hear, but there are functional silos, there are geographic silos, there are divisional silos within the companies, there are many, many silos, and each one working on their own style. But technology gives you the option of connecting them. I want to emphasize one thing, and bit strongly, if maybe it's provocative. I think the current organization structures that we have almost everywhere in the corporate world are obsolete. And I say this with due respect. Please don't think I'm drunk. I didn't drink at all. They are obsolete for a very simple reason, that these structures were devised after the Industrial Revolution in the early 20th century, when the emphasis was on dividing the work. You take work, you divide it, you cluster it, and the idea was how to analyze, how to divide efficiently, do it step by step. And we clustered those divisions of work and made them into departments and functions. That was the pre-digital era thinking on organizations. The digital era gives you a completely different landscape of possibility or a white sheet to reorganize your business completely, because that organization structure and the functional thinking which we had before is not necessary. It's not required now that you can connect the enterprise in real-time basis or through various technologies. So that's what I mean by this first sentence. Secondly, work cross-functionally with key influencers and look at the culture aspects. That's very important. Let me emphasize what do I mean by culture. I often say that culture and strategy are like bow and arrow. Arrow is your strategy, culture is the bow. The bow decides whether the arrow will go in the right direction, at the right speed, will it hit the target or it won't. Exactly the same thing happens in businesses. You can have fabulous strategies and fabulous digital strategy for that matter. But if the culture doesn't let you progress, it won't be successful in delivering value. So if the culture is that people are not aligned, then you can have the best technology, it won't work. If the culture is non-collaborative and is highly political, technologies will not be able to fix that. If the culture is that you get the best predictive model and demand planning and the sales head says, no, this is bullshit, this is the real number actually. And if nobody objects to that, then that's the culture of the organization. Your predictive demand sensing will not work. So it's extremely important, therefore, to work on the cultural aspects, looking at the culture at the level of strategy, which I was talking about before. I was talking about IBP or SNOP, whatever way you like to talk about this. The fact is that technologies today give you the option of having one really aligned game plan, which is aligned between commercial, between supply chain, and finance. The technology allows you to do simulation and scenario planning today in IBP. So to play with different demand scenarios, different supply scenarios, different risk scenarios, and also optimize it, make choices, do the optimization. All this is possible with today's technology, and if you have good SNOP, good IBP supported by right technologies, and some of the points I raised before, the value generation can be very, very significant. Moving on, and not many slides left, you can relax, few. The point I wanted to emphasize here is that pay special attention to connecting with business partners, suppliers, and customers. And we were talking about it, the McDonald's discussion earlier. I think, this is my feeling, I could be wrong, that we're doing a lot of work within the enterprise. Most companies are doing a lot of work within the enterprise. But we are not doing enough work on connecting with suppliers, customers, co-manufacturers, logistics providers enough. The information exchange and data exchange is still very little. It's very primitive in some cases. It is anecdotal. For example, with suppliers, we do not necessarily have exchange of a 2-year plan, an IBP horizon plan. We don't do joint capacity planning. We don't do joint inventory planning. We don't do joint necessarily resilience and sustainability planning. When I say we don't do, I'm talking about in general. Of course, there are great companies that are doing it. But I believe the value generation in the business is going to be significant, not only in terms of financials, but sustainability, resilience, when we are able to connect with suppliers and customers. I still haven't come across too many examples where the scan sales data of the retailers or the sellout data of the distributors is really connected with the demand sensing and demand planning model. It is, anecdotally, but not systematically, not rigorously. That's not the way of doing business. And that's where we lose value, because that's a huge source of value generation. The second point is about the excellence in execution is truly possible now, thanks to digital technologies. So what's happening is that almost all companies are implementing great planning. O9, Kinaxis, OMP, Blue Yonder, and SAP IBP, you name it. Everybody is investing in planning. But the value gets lost in execution. At the level of execution, starting back from the customer orders and its linkage to your distribution, to your factories, to materials plan, to suppliers, a lot of work is still happening on emails, it's on phone calls, it's broken, it is siloed, it is time-lagged. Whereas technologies allow you today to link the entire supply chain in actually real-time basis and make decisions. So if you have, for example, fluctuation in demand, or you have a drop in production, the execution technologies today can simulate the entire supply chain, work out the impact of that, propose options to you, even execute options on your behalf without too much of manual intervention. So I see a lot of investments in planning. I don't see enough investments and focus on the execution side, which is still broken and siloed. And that's where the value also gets lost. Almost coming towards the end, last 3-4 slides, is that digital transformation is not an addition to the old business operating model. It's not that we have the current way of doing business, we add digital technologies to that. So I often say that the old model plus new technology is old and expensive model. So what you need to do is to look at redefine operating model, processes, organization structure, and people skills. Let's make it practical. So you have to ask the question that once I implement this technology, which meetings I will stop doing? Which processes will be stopped? Which reports will be stopped? Which jobs will be stopped? I'm sorry to say that, but we don't need every job on the table when you implement technologies. Or what jobs will change? What can be centralized now better? What can be decentralized better now? So what's going to be the change in the operation? How will I leverage the organization better? So these are the kind of questions we need to ask for leveraging the value out of technology. If we don't, then it looks like this. I put a cartoon, which probably you can read, which says, you know, if we're just going to run anyways, don't you think it's a lot easier if we didn't carry this huge stone car all the time? So that happens sometimes, that we are carrying this huge technology with us, but we haven't changed the business operating model and the business processes and the way we make decisions. That does not generate value. You only add cost and complexity to what you're doing. So the question you have to ask yourself is that, are my operating models, processes, and team skills a good match for the digital era? This is a very fundamental question. I see a lot of discussion on AI these days, which is very superficial, unfortunately, in many instances. In not all instances, but many instances. But people are not looking at this question. In my view, and I make maybe a bold statement, the impact of AI on the organization structure, the jobs, the processes is being significantly underestimated. It's going to have significant impact on, in the next three to 4 years itself. And not enough strategy is being placed around to look at what is it going to be. We're talking about use cases. That's great, thank you. We'll just look at use cases, but it's a lot bigger than that. The organization of the future will look very different thanks to AI compared to what it is, and those who don't look different will be uncompetitive. So this is the kind of question we have to ask. And the associated question is data. How will we capture and leverage data? And I move to the next slide, and I want to basically say that in my view, data is probably a wrong terminology. The terminology for this era is going to be knowledge and intelligence, not just data. So when we talk about data, we often talk about what is on the top left-hand corner, which is ERP data and structured data and so on and so forth. But the reality is that if you look at this side of the slide, which is the bottom, this is knowledge in the organization, knowledge about how sales behave, how consumers behave, how customers behave. All that knowledge is either in Excel spreadsheets, it's in some documents, or it's in emails, or it's in communications. That's all data because it's knowledge. And that knowledge is the input into all the AI modeling that we're talking about these days. So we need to have a strategy, a structure, and the governance to leverage the unstructured data and also the external data, which I was talking about. So the thinking has to move from what is our data strategy, what is our data governance, what is our data ownership model, because that will decide the value of all your digital investments. And given a choice, I would not even use the word data, move more towards knowledge and intelligence. So in the end, the last point I wanted to talk about is people. The fact is that for making any digital transformation successful and valuable, you need to know and manage key influencers. Is it the CFO? Is it a particular country manager? Is it the head of a P&L of a division? Who are the key guys who can be your allies and your sponsors in digital transformations? Communication and storytelling skills are most important. I sometimes say that Einstein was wrong in saying that nothing travels faster than speed of light. Bad news travels faster than speed of light. If your DC operations stop, your CEO comes to know instantly somehow that operations have stopped. So you have to communicate good stories. In the course of digital transformation, make sure that you're also communicating good stories and success, because the bad news will travel automatically anyways. Don't worry about that. Talk about the good stories. Also, in the process of digital transformation, you will create some enemies because not everybody likes the organization structure change. Not everybody likes the change of processes. Some people sort of don't like what's happening around them, and they will complain. So you need to have allies in the senior team and people who are speaking for you even when you're not in the room, because those are very, very important things which I thought I'll say at the end. So to conclude, I like this quote, which I always say, that every battle is won before it is ever fought. And this equally applies to digital transformations. Thank you.